Susan, are you ready for us? Can you kindly unmute your mic, ma, and your face?
Hi, and my first name is Ojane, and actually I've been diagnosed with schizophrenia. I've been diagnosed with a lot of things, but schizophrenia has been the most consistent. Usually, when we think like mental illness, when we think a mental breakdown, we are just thinking that, oh, it's something that just happened that day, or like we don't know what happened. But one thing I've noticed is that it's usually not even up, it's not usually not even a few days leading to the mental illness that causes the mental illness. It's usually years and years of repressed mental and emotional baggage that just comes one day and just becomes like a mental breakdown particularly. And from my own story, in my own perspective, what happened was that like prior to even those few days or prior to that particular day where I like completely lost my mind, I had issues with friendships. I had issues with my friendships. I couldn't retain any friendships for some reason. I kept losing friends over like some weird reason or the other. And like I wouldn't like it would just be like before my eyes that I just like kept losing friendship. So the particular day where I would say that that was where it started to go downhill, that my it degraded down to the point where I now had a psychotic break, was that I had this argument with my friend, and he did something and I couldn't figure out who was in the right and who was in the wrong. And because like I had had like bad friendships that just ended, and like I felt like it was my fault. I felt like it was my responsibility to figure out who was right and who was wrong, and I had to figure it out completely, and so that I don't make that kind of mistakes in the future where I keep losing friends and like I can't like figure out why I'm losing friends. So I had made up my mind that like I was not going to move on with my life until I figure out why I'm having these issues with my friends, because I couldn't lose any more friends. And that was where it started from. That was where the overthinking started from per se, because it was after I had a conversation with him that I now started like trying to figure out, okay, what like who was right, who was wrong, what do I do like in the case of next time. And so it's really started from like from years and years and years of emotional baggage that I didn't address, which is why I would recommend therapy and things like that. But I digress. So I started to think, and at some point I stopped. It wasn't now like the because it was overthinking. It now moved from the point of trying to figure out how to be the best friend for everybody, and then it moved to a point where I just had like so many questions, and like I got to the point where like I had thought so much that I started to question everything. I started to question what was real, what wasn't real. How are we sure the sky is blue? How are we sure, anything is true? Like, is it not human beings that told us? I've always had that thing at the back of my mind somewhere that, oh, human beings are not like completely reliable. So, like, how can we trust them? That kind of thing. And I think that it was from that point on that I started to hear voices. But before I go into the part where, like, I started to hear like audible voices and like actively telling me things to do. I remember seeing Pastor Osen when I was just filled with questions. I was hearing voices, but they were not like it was not that intense just yet. It was just something that I could still ignore. I was hearing voices, but it was something that was ignorable. But at that point where I was like filled with questions, where I had overthought to the point where like in my head, I just had questions, 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 no answers, just questions. I contacted Pastor and like I broke down, like I was crying and I was like, I have only questions, like I'm questioning everything. And of course, Pastor was saying jokes and he was like started like whining me and doing Pastor was saying things. And it did help me feel better. The way he handled it helped me feel like, okay, maybe I will be fine. Because he just made it seem like it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. So he prayed for me and I felt better, and like I just calmed down a bit that okay, maybe like um I need to not overthink everything, and maybe I need to ask less questions. But not long after I saw him, I started asking questions. Like the questions came back. And this time around, it was not necessarily me asking questions anymore. It was like something outside of me was asking me questions, and and I felt like there was something outside of me that was asking me questions, and I felt like I had to answer those questions. And if I don't answer those questions, the world will spoil. So it was from questions, it just became a point where it was only questions. And then the voices, with those questions, the voices I was hearing became really strong. Like the voices became very, very, they became more like intense and more commanding. So I now left the place of where I was asking questions because obviously there were no answers to those questions. The questions I was asking, like, is this guy actually blue? There's no answer to that. So I left the place from where I was asking questions, and then I left the place from where I was asking questions to the place where the voices were asking me questions, to the places where the voices were answering those questions, and to the place where the voices were now telling me what to do. So I progressed from the voices asking me questions to the voices answering those questions. And I was already like, and at first I didn't want to like just accept what the voices were saying because it just felt like a part of me was still fighting to be seen. But I just got to the point where I was like really tired, and I just thought, you know what, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I had stretched myself. At that point, I wasn't even sleeping anymore, because from overthinking and trying to figure out how to be a good friend, to trying to ask questions. I was not sleeping anymore. I wasn't eating. I was just trying to get it done so that I can move on with my life. So it just really got to the point. I got to the point where the voices started asking me questions. I just got to the point where like I was done, like I was tired, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to believe the voices. What's the worst that will happen? And so when the voices started answering those questions, I won't question it or like say to myself, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Even if it wasn't based in reality, I would just accept it like, oh, okay. I mean, who is to say that it's not true? Is it human beings? That kind of thing. And so it now got to the point where the voices stopped answering those questions and then they started telling me what to do. So it was not even a matter of, oh, I'm asking this question and oh, I'm answering this question. The voices now started actively telling me to do stuff like, oh, what do you think will happen if you did this? Or do this, or do this. Like, they started like teaching me things in that sense, like talking to me about life, about things that nobody else should have known or nobody else knows, only me. And they were teaching me about stuff that obviously wasn't real. It was just my brain just made it up, and of course started teaching me. And since I wasn't like necessarily talking back as the voices anymore, I wasn't questioning anything like they told me or they said. I just like started to accept anything, no matter how unrealistic it sounded. I just believed them, and then they would be like, "Oh, why don't you try this out to prove that what we're telling you is true? Why don't you try this out? Why don't you try that out?" And the, coincidentally, when I try out the things the voices said I should do, it would be as if it actually did manifest. Like, there's something here, there's something here. So I would like be doing. I was just like doing bits and pieces of what they would do. Like, oh, just try this out. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Just try this out. And then it now seemed like, oh, what they're saying is actually true. Like, almost as it was almost as if I was seeing what they were saying like manifest in real life. And and I remember at some point I think I started to hallucinate because people's faces, like when I see people's faces, I wouldn't see their faces anymore. I would see like smiles, like maybe the Joker's face on their face, or it's as if they are crying, or sometimes I won't even see their faces at all. I'll see somebody else's face on their face. I started to get spooky because at that point I'd already believed all the delusions. I'd already believed I had superpowers. I already believed I was God. I'd already believed like all the delusions the voices had told me. When I started to hallucinate, I was thinking that I was just manifesting the powers that I had. And it did start to get scary. But at that point, it was not too scary because I thought, okay, I'm in control of my powers. And it was like a good thing. It was like an exciting thing at that point. And when, and I remember where it really started to go downhill when I called my sister, what she was talking about in the beginning of the webinar. It was, I did the last ritual in quote, like what the voices said I should do. And then after I was done with that last ritual per se in quotes, I like the voices that I was hearing like tripled. It was like they were like so the voice, I don't know what happened. They just went from being this, oh nice, we are by your side, we are here for you, you have all these good things, and it just turned so dark. It was now like it was, I don't know how to describe it, but the anxiety, I had never felt anxiety like that before in my life. It was real, like tangible anxiety, and the voices were like they became evil, almost as if they turned from being on my side and turned completely opposite to this evil demonic. And it was so many, like over 100, and it was just in my head that it was just, because I already believed them, like I already trusted the voices, so anything they said I just accepted it as fact. So everything they were telling me, and all of it was dark, like how something horribly is happening somewhere, I just believed it, and I was so scared. Like I was so afraid. I was so afraid that I was immobilized. I couldn't even move because I was so scared. So I just heard this like I just had this one voice. Maybe it's the voice of reason, maybe it was the voice of God. I don't know. It was the voice of reason and voice of God. But it was just at the back of my mind. Call your family, call your family, call your mom, call your mom, call your mom. So I was like trying to communicate with them, like from my own perspective. Because when I was hearing it from their own perspective, that was not how it was from my own perspective. From my own perspective, they kept cutting the call. I was trying to contact them, and then it was like their voices were morphing into each other's voices, and there was no like break. Almost like if my sister is talking, then my brother will start talking. Like I'll hear her voice morph into my brother's voice, and like I was so confused and I was so scared. Like, I just wanted them to come and take me home, and things that I didn't give them any information. I was just like, come and take me home because I just felt like, I mean, the voice of reason told me that if I told them to come and take me home, they would find a way to take me home. So that was just what I did. And so when I was like, I was just fixating on trying to get the attention of like my family. And and then that's when my pastor and like a few of my other friends came in where I was. And me, of course, me, I did not give any information about where I was. I was not even sure if I knew where I was. So when I saw them, I was like, my superpowers, my superpowers have brought this guy. So even the event leading, like in that moment, was, I don't know whether it was because I was already deluded. It really made the delusion worse. It was almost like the events were proving that truly these things that these voices were telling me were true. So so, like my pastor was, my pastor is always going to joke. Pastor Hussein is always going to joke in serious situations. Pastor Hussein was laughing and joking, calling me Charlie Charlie. And me, in my head, Pastor Hussein was one of the people, because the voices told me that Pastor Hussein, that Pastor Hussein was one of the people that like were special and knew about the secrets of life. So I also thought that Pastor Hussein knew about like, oh, like pastor. I also thought that he knew about it and he was just lying. Like he knew about like the superpowers and that we had, because he also had it too. So pastor was, everybody was confused. Like my parents were confused. Even I was confused at some points because reality was so malleable at that point. Like anything anybody told me, that like anything anybody told me would make me question, would actually make me question what reality was at that time. Like if somebody had come to me and said that you are a wise woman with blue eyes, with the way reality was for me in that point in time, I would have believed it. Like nothing was concrete. Everything was just like like mashy, like so fluid. Like nothing was real per se. And that was the point I had gotten to, where I had believed all the voices completely. So when I went home and they were like, oh, they have to take me to psychiatric hospital, I was like, no, you don't get it. Like Pastor Hussein gets it. Pastor Hussein has understands. Poor Pastor Hussein. And I was just like, oh, they were misunderstanding me. And everybody, everybody was misunderstanding me. Everybody. And I was so angry. Like the anger, I was just so angry. And that's why I'm saying that a lot of these things, it's not even just from that day that you break down that, oh, it was just stress that you went through that day. It's from years and years. Because the anger I was feeling was from years and years of being misunderstood. So I thought they were misunderstanding me again. So I was so angry. I was so pissed. And like I was like, they took me to the psychiatric hospital the next day, and I was so angry that nothing is wrong with me. People don't understand. I have I have powers. I do this something is coming to this thing. I didn't feel safe. I felt like the things that gave me the powers were coming to get me soon, and Pastor Oten was also suffering because they were coming to get him soon. So I was like scared that they were not listening to me, like I wasn't safe. And after a while, like they gave me drugs and injections. So I slept for like 4 days straight. And then when I woke up, because I was still delusional, but from the way like they rushed me to the hospital and everything. From the way they rushed me to the hospital, I knew that okay, so acting out is a bad idea. Like if I act out, people are going to like want to take me back to the hospital. So I was delusional by myself inside my head. I did not say it. I was maybe to my sister. Occasionally, I'll just tell Vicky something crazy, and she'll be like, "Oh, no, that doesn't make any sense." As if she could talk sense, and I'll be like, it's true, Vicky, all right. But like, I hardly will talk, say my delusions out loud. I'll just keep them to myself, be paranoid by myself. And I didn't know. To be honest, my sister tried to talk sense into me a couple of times, but to me, she just didn't understand because she was not part of the group of people that had been assigned the job. So, so she so I was just deluded like that. I felt like I was being oppressed. Nobody was listening to me. Nobody understood the powers I had. And I was like that. And I was on drugs for a while. And then one day, just maybe one day, like 2 months or 3 months later, I just woke up one day and I just realized that, oh my God, that was absolutely crazy. And I remember seeing the doctor and the doctor calling it insight. I think they call it, the medical term is insight or something, where when a like crazy person realized that they were crazy, that kind of thing. Like everything that made so much sense to me, then that it was like, yes, it seemed like, oh yes, the voices must be right. It was not like, how could I even accept any of this as reality? Reality finally became concrete, and it was just one day when I woke up, I just realized that, oh my God, I have embarrassed myself. I have, wow, I was actually not okay. And it really opened, the experience really opened my eyes to a lot of this. Like when I would see mad people, in quotes, on the road, I'll not be thinking like, oh my God, maybe this person just like needs drugs. Because the thing that we had grown up with is like if you run mad or if you have a psychotic break, it's probably because they've used it for ritual, or it's probably because they've used your destiny, or because maybe you have done ritual in secret and your ashiri have to, and now it's time for you to suffer the consequences. So everybody, we all thought that madness is so far from us. As long as you don't commit rituals or you don't do wrong, they cannot use you, cannot like it can never happen to you, that kind of thing. So it's happening to me. Like it was so confusing. Like why would something happen to me? And then when I would see like people, like crazy people, I would just be thinking, oh my God, this could have been me. Like if I was not lucky to have people, supportive people around me, or if people like were like ignorant around me about this kind of thing, this could have been me. Like, and it was just that kind of thing really opened my eyes to like mental health issues and the way we like address it in Nigeria, most especially, and the way we just don't handle it well. We don't handle it well because I hear of stories like a lot of people, even in the making of this webinar, a lot of people have come to me and they were like, "Oh, you had a psychotic break. I had a psychotic break too," and the experiences are so similar, and they can't even talk about it. Like the only reason why they could open up about it to me was because I have experienced it. They can't talk about it to their friends or their family, and a lot of them are not even completely okay yet. But they're not on drugs because they don't have enough like awareness around them, and they don't have enough healthcare or people looking out for them because people are just ignorant about it or they just don't know how to handle it. And like I just felt a lot of sympathy for like all the crazy people that are just crazy and like there's nobody like there to assist or to help them, or they don't have a very strong support system. And it just really made me like want to help those kind of people because it's crazy how common it is. So common, like maybe like 1 in every 3 person I know have experienced it or have had somebody that has experienced this, but nobody wants to talk about it because so it's so stigmatized. I remember even my psychiatrist wouldn't want me to talk about it. He's always like, don't talk about it. Like he always wants me to leave it in the past and pretend like it didn't happen and that kind of thing. And like even my psychiatrist wouldn't want me to like talk about it because like no, it's private. And I was just like, if I don't talk about this, like how would people just going to keep suffering in silence, that kind of thing. So yeah, that was what happened, and that was what motivated me to want to go into like mental health, especially in Nigeria, because this just putting mad people, stereotyping mad people and putting mad people in a box, just everybody just pack it and just put it in one place. It's just not healthy for a lot of Nigerians at all. And not even necessarily people that have had psychotic breaks, but like people that have gone through any form of mental health issue. So thank you for understanding.
You're coming next.
Okay. Ajane did not really explain that story how much she stressed me, but it's fine. It's not about this. It's not about me. It's about her. But actually, she did not say. She didn't say some of the very interesting things that went on. Because some very interesting things happened. About Pastor. Wait, Ajane, don't go now. This is. We actually need you here for a while. I don't know why you attacking me. I was actually there. Do you want to tell us some of the stuff that went down in the hospital? Because like some of the interactions you had with your doctors or with other people who had mental illnesses, stuff like that. And also tell us more about the second time that you had a psychotic
Okay.
episode.
So okay. So if you about like issues like this, mental is so it's so they look like if somebody has malaria, you have malaria. Probably the tongue is bitter. If somebody has typhoid, you have like symptoms of typhoid. Like everything is so distinct with physical illnesses. But with mental illnesses, everything looks like everything. They all look like each other. Like honestly, with my experiences with doctors, I've gotten different diagnoses. The first doctor said it was early symptoms of schizophrenia. The second doctor, she said that she gave me three like conditions. She gave me schizophrenia, she gave me bipolar disorder, and she gave me one other thing. And she said that I should go and research on the three. Mind you, I was not even okay that time period. Me that I didn't even believe anything was wrong with me. She was like, I should go and research it and I should look at the one with the symptoms that are closest to mine and diagnose myself pretty much. The third doctor said diagnosed schizophrenia. The first doctor diagnosed bipolar disorder. But then when we went to the hospital again the next day, the other doctor with him said, like, how is he sure it's bipolar disorder? Like, he has diagnosed nothing. So, like, they look so much like each other that getting a diagnosis was very tough. Getting a diagnosis with mental health, it can be very tricky because all of them look like each other. Like the symptoms are so similar. So usually the good thing about this is that with drugs, one drug is sort of like a one drug fits all kind of thing. So you can get one drug that will treat bipolar disorder, treat schizophrenia, treat BPD, treat borderline personality, treat everything. So they don't need to stress too much about knowing exactly what the diagnosis is before they can give you drugs that will solve for it. But getting a diagnosis for your mental issue in Nigeria, just forget that. Just don't put your mind too much. Just take their drugs and believe them. And with my doctors, I've had such weird doctors, honestly, because I remember the first doctor I I saw, he was okay. The drugs he gave me was okay, but he was the one that was so particular that I never talk about my illness to anybody. Nobody must know. Well, he did not necessarily say it is a shameful thing, But she pretty much pushed that agenda because if you're
It's
like
not like
nobody must do well, people will leave you. That kind of thing. It's like, oh my god, should I be ashamed? That kind of thing. So he probably was sound in the sense that he had a lot of experience, but he was old, probably because he was old school, most likely. He just felt like, oh, it was not to be talked about. And he felt like he was really doing me a favor that he was not defining me based on it, as like he was relating with me normally, like somebody that never had a mental episode. I was like, okay, thank you, sir. And then with the other doctors, I had this particular doctor that she had such short temper, and she would like be vexing for somebody that is not okay. And it was like, you've had all these experiences with crazy people. How don't you have patience? And like I remember the last time that it happened, she was like threatening to put me in the ward until I know what is wrong with me. Like that was why she didn't want to put me in the ward for me to get better. She wanted to put me in the ward until I know what is wrong with me. And it was just Nigerian. Like Vicky was saying one time, I feel like Nigerian doctors themselves like need mental health therapy because they just don't feel, maybe it's because of maybe just the way mental awareness is in Nigeria. They're just not equipped for they're just not equipped per se. I don't mean like with diagnosing drugs. I mean like with like handling a crazy person. They're just not equipped for that kind of thing. They just don't know what to say, don't know how to act, just have all these like weird preconceived notions. So having to like having doctors was like tough. Relating with those doctors, they were like the doctors stressed me actually because all of them they just had their different opinion in a particular thing. And sometimes the the doctors their opinions even like were contradictory. So the doctors in Nigeria, they they need to they need to be better. They need to be better specialists. And for the second time, usually the second time when it happened, I think I was also trying to figure out something. I was trying to figure I don't remember what I know what I was trying to figure out. I was trying to figure out something relating to God. Like that was I was having therapy that time because like I had like a lot of psychological issues even after the mental breakdown, and I was so sad and like I didn't even know why I was sad. I just was sad. Like I was just worn out. So I was going to therapy, and I was talking to a therapist, and I was just like explaining. I was just like pretty much writing out to her everything that was running through my mind. And there was one particular and then we got to the matter of God. I mean, I started like I've always had so many questions about God. So I like had all those questions, and then I was just typing out all the questions to her like I just like she told me to like write out how I felt in an email. So I just was writing out every single question that I had. And I'm not sure. Usually I can't exactly say when I wish transition from sanity to crazy. But I can tell what triggered it. I remember it was the conversation about God, and then the next thing I know, I was trying to figure out something about the difference between God and the devil. What's the difference between God and the devil? I remember I was even having a conversation with my babe about it around that time. So I was just trying to figure it out, and of course, the voices came back. Things that after the first episode, I never completely stopped hearing voices. I could just ignore them, like with the help of all the drugs. I could just like ignore them and not really listen to them per se, especially if it didn't make sense. But then I started hearing voices again, and I don't even know. I just started to believe them because why not? Usually, the problem always starts with when I say what's the worst that will happen. So I started to listen to those voices again, and of course, it came with all their dilulu and all the things, all the mysteries of life that only me knew. And of course, I thought the second time I still thought Pastor Osen was part of our group because Pastor Osen has to be part of our group. So the I started hearing they started telling me different things, something of which I believed everything. of course. And they were just saying different things about myself and different things about the world. And then I was like, okay. And I think that day my sister was like, oh, pastor wants to see you. And me, of course, I was thinking that it was the voices that have orchestrated pastor to want to see me so that I can do one thing I don't want to do. So when I saw, like, I went to church to see pastor, and I don't know when I just got into that church. I don't know what happened. Like when I just got into the church, I was scared. I was like so scared. Like even going to the church, I was like so like afraid for some reason. Like I was so scared. I felt exposed. I felt naked. And then when I go to the church and the person saw me, and pastor came and he was like trying to talk to me. I just froze, to be honest. Like I was not even trying. Like these things were not things I was like actively trying to do. But I don't know what happens in my body. I was just stiff. I just couldn't move. Like I couldn't. And then like I was just, I don't know. My brain, I was scared. Like I had to fight. I had to fight something. One day, and I remember I typed it out to my sister about maybe the devil and God and one thing and one other thing. And then I had like my body was reacting to that. I don't know, but I was just scared and I felt like I had to shout and I had to fight so that they will not get me. And but the second experience wasn't the good thing about why I would say the second experience didn't seem like it didn't seem to people. Well, let me not say it didn't seem to people, but it wasn't as dramatic as the first because the second experience it was it was like um it was like God and the devil, that kind of thing. So I was like differentiating between God and the devil. The first experience, the conversation was not, it did not start with God and the devil. The conversation was not God and the devil. The conversation was, how do I be a good friend? So then God and the devil entered and I couldn't differentiate between good and evil. Everything was just messed up. But with the second one, um, it was specifically about God and the devil. Like that was what caused that delusion. So I like had somewhere in my head, like I had convinced myself that God was good and that God like was a good God. So it really, really helped with the display of the psychosis the second time because I was not as afraid that something was coming to get me. I wasn't safe. But in my head, I was like convinced somewhere that okay, I'm safe. Like no matter what, I'm safe. God is good. So it really, really helped with how I managed the second episode. So it didn't seem to people like I was as crazy as the first, but I was still very, very deluded.
Guys, one thing that she may have mentioned, I remember this second delusion was around my birthday, and she took my birthday pictures, and I did not know that the person snapping me for my birthday was already. But then I remember we were having such weird conversations because she was already cuckoo. We were having such weird conversations. She used to be like, Vicky, do you know that when God does something, the devil will come and do something, and then she kind of created this like weird altar for herself. I don't know if you remember that. She started wearing only t-shirts and shorts, like a cartoon character, and she would just change the t-shirts, but wear only the shorts. And he's like, "What's going on?" And she was like, "That's me now. My identity is to wear t-shirts. I will never wear anything that is not t-shirts." And it was just so weird, like of all the things. But that's just I feel like that's just a pocket of how weird these things can be.